hi, I watched all the Rugrats holiday specials, so you don't have to, but you definitely should, because they're really, really good. The next one. This is season 2 of the original show, so it came out in 1992, and so it definitely shows its age. And I had this one on VHS when I was growing up, so I'm most familiar with the plot, but rewatching it as an adult, I definitely was a little bit more in touch with the adults and what they were doing and, like, the jokes that they were saying versus, like, the babies and their stuff. Although I was also very in touch with that, and their plotline was actually funnier than I remember as well, or at least more solid than the one from the new reboot, the other video I did. This episode opens with their meeting Santa at a toy store. Chucky is explaining to Tommy what Santa is and what Christmas is and how it's, like, really scary. And Tommy's like, dude, it's Santa Claus. He's not scary. He brings you toys. And Angelica, meanwhile, is causing a complete ruckus and being a complete buffoon and pulling the beard off of Santa and scaring all of the kids. So she rips the beard off of Santa, and then the department store sends her every toy in the store, and she's later at the Pickles house is just going through them and, like, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. And meanwhile, of course, her dad is like, poor Angelica, she's so traumatized. And in the early seasons, the creators even pointed this out, that Angelica was, like, pure evil, and she was, like, a true brat, and she kind of has, not a redemption arc, but, like, she kind of mellowed out in the later seasons. She wasn't, like, it's a cartoon sitcom, so there's very little development you can do between, like, seasons like that, but she was a little bit rewritten in the later seasons, and then I think again in the reboot. And Stu's like, yeah, poor Angelica, like, your kid's a brat. So all of the adults are in the kitchen. Dee Dee suddenly decides, like, oh my god, what if we get, like, a cabin for Christmas and we all go up together? And so again, it's like this, like, found family trope, and I'm like, how cute to just, like, gather all your kids up and just, like, go get a cabin. Like, how adorable is that? Like, I love that. I just, like, oh my god, how cute is that? And they decided this, like, it's like 3 days before Christmas, though. Like, how on earth do you think you're gonna get a cabin? Because, like, later in the episode, Dee Dee says, like, I know it's, like, the week before Christmas, but can we get a cabin? Like, girl. Ma'am. Anyway, Chucky is continuing to instill this, like, fear of Santa into Tommy, and Tommy's like, why? Like, he's a good guy. And my favorite subplot of the episode is when Angelica gifts the Magi's Phil and Lil in what is possibly the most unfaithful yet funny retellings of the tale. Angelica sees Phil moping, and she's like, hey, what's wrong? And he's like, I don't know what to get Lil for Christmas, but he's also, like, a baby, so he really doesn't have to get Lil anything, but for the sake of plot, he doesn't know what to get Lil for Christmas. And she's like, well, what about crayons? Because she got crayons in that department store, like, haul, and so she's like, well, what about crayons for her coloring book? And he's like, oh my god, what a great idea. And so she's like, actually, it's gonna cost you your favorite Reptar doll. And he's like, my favorite doll, fine, for Lil, because he's a good brother. So he trades his favorite Reptar doll for crayons for Lil's coloring book, and I know you know where this is going. Angelica thinks the bit ends there, but then she sees Lil across the hall, and so she's like, actually, let me go talk to you. And she's like, Lil, what's wrong? And so she's like, I don't know what to get Phil for Christmas. Again, year one, you don't have to get him anything, but again, for the sake of plot. And she's like, well, what is Phil like? And she's like, what's his favorite toy? And she's like, eventually she gets to the Reptar doll, and she's like, yeah, his Reptar doll. And she's like, yeah, and so what about a space helmet for his Reptar doll? And she's like, oh my god, Angelica, that's such a good idea, but where am I gonna get it? And Angelica's like, guess what, I have one. And she's like, I'll trade you for your coloring book. And she's like, oh my god, but my coloring book's my favorite thing ever. And she's like, but for Phil, because again, she's a good sister, and so she trades her favorite coloring book for the space helmet. But, Angelica has the Reptar doll. So to recap, in case you never read The Gift of the Magi or watched Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas, Phil is going to give Lil crayons for her coloring book, but Lil gave the coloring book to Angelica to trade for the Reptar space helmet that Phil traded Angelica for the crayons. I probably could have explained that easier. Phil will have a space helmet for no doll. Lil will have a crayons with no book. Which also, why did Betty give Lil a coloring book but they don't have crayons? Multiple houses with toddlers. How do you not have crayons? So in the middle of all that happening, Chaz and Drew decide to regain the children's Christmas spirit, because Drew still thinks Angelica hates Christmas because of what happened with the department store, and Chaz knows that Chucky is afraid of Santa, and so they think it's a good idea for Chaz to dress up as Santa. He wants to dress up as Santa for the kids, and Drew wants to hire a Santa. That's important. He wants to hire an outside Santa to come in and dress up and be Santa for the kids. Angelica, after the Gift of the Magi thing, I think this is so funny. Angelica's like, I'm bad, Cynthia. I am so bad. Like, she knows that she knows what she's doing is bad. Like, she's acknowledging that. Again, Chucky's still trying to convince Tommy that, like, Santa's not a good guy. And Tommy's like, what if we catch him and ask him if he's good or bad? And Chucky's like, well, that's not a good idea. I don't want to catch him. And he's like, no. We're gonna catch him. Because Tommy's, like, the mastermind of this whole situation. Lou gathers all the kids and he tells them the story of Santa. And he's like, if you're bad, then you're gonna get coal from Santa and you're not gonna get any toys. And Angelica's like, oh shit, like, I'm bad. And so she's like, oh my god, like, I gotta fix what I did. Dee Dee comes in and she's like, oh my god, I found a cabin, you guys, we can leave in the morning. Everybody takes their kids home. Drew's putting Angelica to bed and she's like, is Santa really gonna give me coal if I'm a bad kid? And Drew's like, well, yeah, if you're a bad kid, but Drew thinks she's a good kid. So he's like, but you're a perfect little angel. She has, like, a terrifying dream that Santa gives her only coal, and he gives Phil and Lil, like, what they want, like a Reptar doll and a coloring book. She wakes up and she's like, oh my god, I have to fix what I did. And she's like, I'm going to fix it. And so we end Act 1 with that. And I like the bit, it goes into the next episode, and, like, the episode title card just says later that day. And so the gang is going up to the cabin and foregoing all car seats, and Britney Spearsing it with their babies. There's like 10 people in one van and the grandpa's in the trunk. And Angelica is immediately like trying to fix the situation with Phil and Lil. She's like, hey, like, can I talk to you for a second? And then Betty keeps kind of interrupting, being like, hey, these are my kids. Like, let's go do this thing. Betty and Dee Dee and Phil and Lil go to chop down a tree, and Angelica goes with them, and then she's trying to talk to them about the whole present thing, and then she slides down the hill. Like, that's one of the moments. Obviously, it's just as easy as her just giving the doll back and giving the coloring book back, but for the sake of plot, it carries on for a long time. She's like trying to explain to them, let's talk about gifts and like gifting, and like she's like beating around the bush a lot. Chucky and Tommy are making traps all around the house, and their parents are not paying attention at all because they're like taking stuff off of the tree, and like it's like they're home aloneing it, and they are like babies. And there's this like at home decorating montage, and like that's when we see again Tommy and Chucky setting up these little like home alone traps for Santa. That there's like a 2-minute montage of like all this stuff happening, and then we see them at Christmas dinner, and Angelica is asking Dee Dee like the rules of coal at dinner. She's like, well, like, am I gonna get coal if I'm bad? What if I was almost good? What if I tried to fix something? And Dee Dee's like, what are you talking about? Like, you're perfect. And I don't get it. Why Dee Dee thinks she's perfect. The parents put the babies to bed, like the little babies, and then Tommy and Chucky are trying to stay up for Santa, and then they end up falling asleep anyway. Chaz sneaks away from the rest of the adults to put the Santa suit on for Chucky, even though Drew already said he was gonna hire a Santa guy from like an outside company. And so he calls that company. He's like, hey, I'm just confirming for tonight, even though it doesn't make any sense because they put all of the babies to bed already. So it's like, were they going to wake up the babies when the Santa got there and to be like, oh, it's Santa, wake up, we're gonna wake you up in the middle of the night? Like, I don't understand what their logic was with that one. Like, Angelica was still up, but like it was also for Chucky, like, and I guess the other little babies, but like, what? Angelica is listening to a TV ad, so she overhears this Christmas hotline ad on TV, which is very obviously like a suicide hotline for like, talk to somebody if you're feeling sad on Christmas and you need to talk to somebody on this holiday. So she's like, oh my god, I'm sad, it's Christmas, I need to call this hotline. She dials a number, and she, very importantly, does not dial the number that was the hotline. Which I don't think I got as a kid. Like, I didn't realize that she was dialing a different number. The person, it's like a lug nut warehouse or something like that. And so the guy's like, hello, who is this? And she is like, I want to talk to Santa. And he's like, wrong number. And she's like, I want to talk to Santa now. It like screams at him. And he's like, okay, yeah, I'm Santa. What can I do for you? Or whatever he says. And she's like, I just want to know if I'm on the naughty or nice list. And he's like, yeah, you're on the bad list. It didn't. Okay, yeah, you were just screamed at by this child like 10 seconds ago, but truly, honestly, deeply, didn't need to tell her that. Could have just said nice list. Could have just made everybody's night better. But it didn't really benefit him in any way to do that. It just made her have an existential crisis as well. We see Jazz trying to climb down the chimney to like sneak in, which again, no reason to do that because the only child who's awake is Angelica. There was like no benefit to doing that. Stu walks inside like the front door carrying a bunch of presents and he trips over one of Chucky and Tommy's little traps. And so there's this big ruckus that wakes the babies up. They're like, oh, it's Santa, oh my god, he got stuck in the trap. And they're like, oh no, it's just Daddy. It's just Stu. And then, meanwhile, Chaz is coming down the chimney, and so they're walking back to the room, and they see a man in the chimney because they closed the like little fire thingy, and so they see him like in the fireplace, and they're like, "Oh my God, there's a man in there," and he's like covered with like ash. And so they put the little like fire poker like in the thing, and they're like freaking out, and then they're like, "Oh my God, no, it's just Chaz," and so it's not Santa, and like Chucky was like terrified, and so Chaz is like, "Oh no, it's just me," and there's this sweet moment. And then the doorbell rings, and then a Santa Claus comes in. And Drew's like, oh, it's the Santa I hired. Finally, he's here. Which, again, if Stu had not walked in through the front door and waking up the babies, what was their plan for the babies to be awake for all this? I don't get it. So the Santa gives all the babies their little presents. It's all cute, and he tells Angelica that trying to be good is almost as important, or is just as important as doing the good thing in the first place. And so, because she tried to fix the situation with Phil and Lil, that it was good enough, which I guess, like, when you fuck something up, then try to fix it. Like, yeah, that's part of it, but like, she intentionally, like, knew what she was doing because she told Cynthia, her doll, she was like, I'm bad, I'm really bad. And then only when she found out that she wasn't going to get toys is when she tried to fix it. So I guess it's not like she accidentally traded Phil and Lil their toys. Like, she did that on purpose. The lesson overall stands. Like, when you try to do something good and just things keep getting in the way and you can no longer do that good thing, you at least had that good intention. It's like when you try to fix something that you broke. Like, that's at least better than doing nothing. Don't be like Angelica and just do bad things and then do the bare minimum to fix them. The lesson's a little bit skewed there. So everybody opens their presents anyway because it's almost morning, even though the adults never went to bed and Angelica never went to bed and it's still nighttime out. But so they all open their presents anyway. Phil and Lil exchange their gifts, and so she unwraps the crayons and it's like, crayons! And he unwraps the space helmet and he's like, a space helmet! I can't do Phil, I'm sorry. And then Angelica comes in and saves the day, and she gives them back their toys, and she's like, Merry Christmas. She learned her lesson, so she eventually did the good thing, but like, Chucky admits to Tommy that he's no longer afraid of Santa because they had this like sweet moment. And then Chaz admits to Drew that they were better off hiring the Santa because of that man who was just in the house giving the toys to all the kids. And that it was like a better idea to have the professional and also not to come down the fucking chimney. Like, what the fuck was that? Like, scared the living daylights out of your toddler son who was already afraid of Santa. And Drew's like, yeah, I know, of course I was right. And the phone rings, and so we answered the phone, and it was the Santa actor calling to be like, hi, I'm sorry, I'm stuck in the snow. I'm calling from my car phone, and I won't be able to make it. He's like at home watching TV. And Drew's like, what do you mean you won't be able to make it? I paid for you, blah, blah, blah. And, like, Drew gets all mad. And then he hangs up, and Jazz is like, who was that? And he's like, it was the Santa actor. He just canceled on me. And then they're like, what? Then who was that guy? And I was like, oh my God, it was really Santa. And it was like, oh, the Santa fake out. Angelica is playing with her new Cynthia dollhouse that she just absolutely had to have, and the one that Santa gave her. And so she opens the garage and she's like, I wonder if there's a car in here. And then there's a little lump of coal, and Dee Dee's like, Angelica, is that a lump of coal? And then it cuts away and it pans away, and Santa is flying away with his little reindeer, and it's just this like cute little end story. And so she could just kind of did like, hey, little nod to being like, yeah, you were kind of on the naughty list too. You didn't quite get everything. So overall, I give this episode a 9 out of 10. It it really holds true to being a good holiday special. There wasn't too many plot lines to follow. There was what the parents were doing, and then there was what the babies were doing. There was Chucky and Tommy, there was Angelica, Phil, and Lil, and then there was the parents, and a lot of them kind of overlapped. I think it's a really good episode, and there are some like funny little one-liners in there, so I definitely recommend it.